What's up, guys? This is Chicago Bears Insight with your host Ian, and today is the first preview video for the matchup between the Chicago Bears and the Philadelphia Eagles in the preseason Week 1 game on August 8th. So today, what we're going to be talking about is we're going to recap kind of training camp, some things that have been happening the last few weeks, the off season, and then we're going to discuss what to look for in the first preseason game, what players to look for, and kind of just things to generally look for in the game as it goes on. Um, One of the things I want to discuss really quick is the training camp, how that's been going, and some players have been standing out, and some news that's going on. We're going to get some big headlines out of the way. Like first, Marquise Wilson, the Bears' number 3 receiver, or projected to be number 3 receiver, was injured with a broken clavicle. It's kind of like a collarbone injury, and he is projected to be out for an extended period of time. He seems optimistic that he'll return during the season, which I wouldn't doubt, but I doubt he'll return very early in the season, most likely very late. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know the extent of the injury, and they haven't really discussed it since it happened, so I'm not really sure how long he'll be gone, but I would doubt that he'll be back before week 10, if I had to guess. Um, Another thing is the Bears have decided to suspend tight end Martellus Bennett. He, after a play where he caught a pass from Jay Cutler, Kyle Fuller, the rookie first round pick from Virginia Tech, tried to strip him for a fumble, which they are taught to do in practice, and he grabbed his pads and spun him to the ground. It was an accident. He didn't obviously intend to. He was trying to go for the ball and missed, and he spun to the ground, Martellus Bennett. And Martellus Bennett got angry, got up to his feet, and body slammed, not ferociously, but he did take Fuller and slam him to the ground, in which case the Bears the next day decided to suspend him and fine him. Now, since that incident, they haven't released a lot, but they have not ruled him out for August 8th, the preseason game. So there is a possibility you'll see him, but I highly doubt it. I think he'll be back afterwards, and you will most likely see him in week 2. Um, so that is the most likely thing that will happen. But I wouldn't be surprised if he played, or at least was seen. But I think he'll be practicing next week for the next preseason game. Now, I mentioned Kyle Fuller, and he is projected to play in the number 2 spot when they go to a nickel. Instead of the rookie playing the nickel, because they do have Charles Tillman and Tim Jennings playing outside. And generally, last year it was Tim Jennings, Charles Tillman, and Isaiah Fry, and Isaiah Fry would play the nickel. This year, what they're going to do is they're going to move Tim Jennings to nickel and allow Kyle Fuller to play outside in the number 2 spot. Because Tim Jennings is the veteran, it's easier for a veteran to move the nickel, because nickel is a very hard position for anyone to learn because of the diversity in the receiver routes the number 3 receiver will play in the slot. So it will be easier for Tim Jennings, who's a smaller, shiftier guy, to play the nickel than it would be for Kyle Fuller to learn that position and play nickel. So he'll play outside, which will be an easier transition for him. Is why they're doing it, essentially. It'll be an easier transition for Fuller, and he will play number 2. Charleston will play number 1 corner, and Tim Jennings will play number 3 in nickel, not in base 4-3 defense, which they will. That's obviously their base. It'll be Charles Tillman and Tim Jennings, most likely, unless they go to a sub, in which case it could be any combination of the two. Most likely be Charles Tillman and Kyle Fuller, because they're two bigger receivers, or corners, excuse me. Some depth chart news. They released their first depth chart last week on August 5th. Actually, it wasn't last week. Excuse me, it was earlier this week. And some things to look for is safety. Now they said in this depth chart I'm looking at right now, it lists Brock Vereen, a rookie in the 4th round this year, and Ryan Mundy, who we picked up in free agency, as the starters, and then MD Jennings, Chris Conte, Chris Stelz are behind Vereen, and then Danny McCray, Adrian Wilson, and Marcus Trice are behind Mundy. Now, Conti and Craig Stoltz haven't played this in the training camp because they've been injured, so it is unlikely that they will play in the preseason game. But the starters, I said Brock Vereen and Ronnie Mundy are starting, and according to the depth chart, that is not actually true. They've been switching it up the whole time training camp's been going on. I think the most recent combination was Danny McCray and Adrian Wilson, and the two positions are interchangeable, they said. So even though at strong safety, which is what Ryan Mundy's playing in, they're the backups to, Danny McCray would be playing, for example, free safety, and Adrian Wilson would be playing strong, or they could be playing the other two, or it could be rotated. And so they've been rotating the different safeties, and it's up for grabs. So one of the things to look for in the first preseason game is which safeties they start when the first team offense is on the field, or first team defense, excuse me, and to see which safeties they start, and if that is a consistent thing throughout the preseason games, whether in week 2 they start the same two safeties, or in training camp they start the two same safeties. So that's something to look for. At receiver, obviously Marquise Wilson's injured, so the number 3 spot is up for grabs. They signed, the depth chart doesn't mention him because this was later, but the Bears picked up receiver Greg Hurd out of Eastern Washington, who was an undrafted rookie last year, I think. So he's one of the candidates for receiver. Him, Josh Bellamy, Chris Williams, Eric Weems, and Josh Morgan. Now, Josh Morgan recently compared himself to Anquan Bolden, or said he was similar. So we'll see. I don't really take much into that myself. I say because the preseason game is next week that he'll, or tomorrow, not next week. There is a preseason game next week though. That he'll have an opportunity to prove that over the next few weeks, and if he makes the number 3 spot, great. I've always been the one. I've always liked the idea of having a smaller, shiftier guy play slot, like a really fast guy, kind of like a Wes Welker, who can play, who's fast and can play different routes. And not necessarily, you're not necessarily going to throw jump balls to him, but he's that faster. He's kind of that game changer. So that's my opinion. That's what I've always liked at a slot receiver. But we don't really do that here at the Bears. We like to have bigger receivers, and that's the preference that Jake Cutler has claimed that he has liked better. But he does not say. He has said that he doesn't mind smaller receivers. Another thing to look for in the game, the preseason game, is obviously the receivers, the safeties. Where now at corner, I mentioned that like Kyle Fuller, how well he plays in the preseason game, he will most likely get his chance to play some first team reps during the preseason game. So he will get his chance to play against number 1 receivers from the other team, from the Eagles. Now, the Eagles last year destroyed the Bears, so I would imagine that the Bears wouldn't do particularly well tomorrow, but no, this is a different year, and it's a preseason game, so, and Chip Kelly, as living in Oregon and being able to follow the Ducks when Chip Kelly was with the Ducks, I know what kind of offense he runs and a tempo that they run, so I would imagine that this probably won't be a close game. The scoreboard doesn't really matter, it's more about reps, but I would definitely watch Kyle Fuller, see how he plays against that high tempo offense that the Eagles will definitely bring. And Chip Kelly will most likely not let up on the tempo. He wants to see guys run, he wants to see how they all play, so even the backups for the Eagles are going to be running full speed. They're going to basically be running the first team offense, but with backups, so Kyle Fuller is definitely someone to look for and see how well he adjusts to the tempo. Although it is a very unique offense, but if he plays well, then I would imagine that he will be playing very well against normal teams. Normal with an asterisk, because each team is unique, but it is what it is. Also, look for who they put at number 3. I doubt that who they start at number 3 is going to be the starter week 1 or even the week 2 of the preseason. So, I'm obviously interested in Josh Morgan because he's basically saying he's Anquan Bolden or similar. So, I'm very interested in Hurd. Quite honestly, he was friends with Marquise Wilson, and they played, or they didn't play, but they played against each other when Marquise Wilson was at Washington State. So they're friends. I watched the video, and he wishes the best for Marquise, and so I'm looking at Hurd as a potential person that could play, and I'm hoping that he can fill a role. Another player to look for is Jordan Lynch, who was undrafted out of Northern Illinois. He played quarterback in Northern Illinois. He was number 3, I think, in the Heisman voting. I'm not really sure. I knew he was really good last year. And he's making the transition currently to running back. Now, running back, from what I've heard, is one of the easiest transitions to go from college to the NFL. So if he played quarterback, I would imagine that the transition would be really, really easy for him because he's used to studying playbooks, and that his transition will be really well. I think he'll play well, especially on special teams. I think he's a big body. There were some discussions about him moving to safety, not by the Bears, but like by other people saying he could play safety because he's so big. So him playing special teams, I think, is where he'll make his biggest impact. Because another thing that I'll get to is running back depth, and I think he'll definitely make the team, whether that be on the practice squad or maybe as a third string running back behind someone else. I doubt he'll be the number 1 backup. So that's Jordan Lynch is someone to watch for. I know I'm very interested in watching how he plays because I want the guy to succeed. So I'm hoping that he plays well and that he makes a team in some form or fashion, whether that be on the 53-man roster or on the practice squad. And like I said, running back depth. The Bears have a number of guys, and in Sean Drawn, Michael Ford, Kadeem Carey, Sonoris Perry, and Jordan Lynch. Michael Ford was with the Bears last year. He made a big splash in last year's preseason as a returner, which is probably why he made the team. Kadeem Carey was a draft pick this year, I think in the 5th round. Sean Drawn is a free agent. Sonoris Perry is an undrafted free agent, I believe. And Jordan Lynch is another undrafted free agent. I'm interested in Kadeem Carey. I think he's a bigger back. He's gonna be more of a bulldozer. He's kind of like what Michael Bush was last year, but I think he's a lot better than Michael Bush, or at least he could be. Something that all these backs need to do, and what will most likely be giving them a job, the number 2 or number 3 spot, is pass blocking, which is a very important thing in this offense, and why Matt Forte is so good and so versatile that he can pass block, he can catch, he can run the ball. So we're looking for someone who can pass block and obviously run the ball and catch. We're looking for very versatile backs and not one-sided backs. I do think Kadeem Carey will be at least one of the 3 backs that makes a team. I think Michael Ford has his work cut out for him. I think if anything, Michael Ford will be on the team as a returner, and that will be the reason why he'd be on the team. And speaking of returners, that is wide open. Like most of these positions that I'm talking about, they're wide open. ever since Devin Hester left, we've been looking for a new returner, and I think the guy who's going to get is Eric Weems because he's been with the team for 2 years, and he was a Pro Bowl returner with the Atlanta Falcons before we picked him up. So he's most likely the guy that's going to get the job. But definitely watch for anyone else who potentially could be back there and getting it. Like I said before, Michael Ford is a candidate for it, and I do think that because he was with the team last year. Anyone who was with the team last year, I think, has a bit the best chance, but we will see, obviously. So now that we got the news part out of the way, I'm going to move to a part where I kind of give my prediction for the game and see how it goes. Like I mentioned before, the Eagles destroyed us last year. If we had won the game last year against the Eagles, we would have won the division. And then we went on to lose to the Packers in Week 17, so we had 2 opportunities to win the division and didn't. Finished 8-8. Didn't go to the playoffs for the third or fourth straight year. Actually, the third straight year. And hopefully, with a revamped defense and the offense being continuity, having the same offensive line as last year, having relatively the same receivers, G Color can improve that. The offense will carry us at least into the playoffs. I think this is definitely a playoff team. Whether it's a Super Bowl team will be determined by how consistent the offense plays and how consistent the defense can play, because last year was atrocious. And I think this game will determine how far the defense has come, because the Eagles last year destroyed us in the running game because that is how they are orientated. They are a run-first team, and Nick Foles is a very good quarterback, or at least was last year. So if the defense can play well in the preseason game against the number ones, which I would figure the number one offense for the Eagles would be out there for at least the quarter. I'm not sure how long the Bears are planning to keep their first stringers out there. Mark Trestman has commented on how long the first string offense or defense is going to be out there. So definitely, I'm looking to see how the defense plays against the number ones for Philadelphia. And I think if they play well, at least if they play well the preseason game, so you're not getting the full playbook out of the Eagles or anything, but I think if they play well, definitely don't let them score 20 points in the first quarter, then I would say the defense is definitely improved, especially if we get pass rush and can stop the run. If we can stop the run, then I feel that we're definitely going to be better this year, but so definitely look to see how the defense plays, how consistent the offense can play. Last year, the offense would get into positions where they would get stuck and they wouldn't play very well or very consistent. So I'm looking to see if they can be very consistent this year, especially from Jay Cutler, who hopefully doesn't get injured and go down again. Although last year, Josh McCown played well, so it didn't really matter, but we haven't always been fortunate in the past with Caleb Haney being there a couple of years ago to have good, decent backups. So hopefully the backup quarterback position with Jordan Palmer, David Fales, and Jimmy Clausen can work out. That's another position group to look for, and something that I forgot to mention in that hopefully the backup quarterback can at least play similar to how Josh McCown played last year. So hopefully the Bears play well. Hopefully they win. It's a preseason game, so it doesn't matter. But obviously a win is better than a loss in every situation. There is never a situation where winning is bad. In football, anyway, maybe in real life, you could find some dumb way to win and have it be a bad situation. But I'm not going to get philosophical. So that about wraps it up. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at ShyBearsInsight. And I will see you guys in the recap video for the August 8th preseason game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Have a great day.